Ladies and gentlemen, finding an affordable knife that is durable, strong, and good quality is sometimes hard to come around. But could this D2 Civivi Sizzle that costs between 15 to 25 US dollars be that great bargain we've been looking for? Or is it just another flop? So in today's video, we'll put it to the test to see how the Sizzle holds up after cutting, chopping, being thrown around, and being run over by a truck. Will this knife survive the beating? And also, how does it compare to the popular and also budget-friendly Ozark D2 knife? Let's find out. So right out of the box, the D2 blade is quite sharp and has no problem cutting paper like it's butter. But how will it hold up after cutting some wood? Will it still be sharp? So in the first test, we cut away on some pine wood, which is a fairly soft wood, but nevertheless, you're still putting some force to cut through, which in most cases will put some stress and will begin to wear out the edge of the blade. So after numerous passes of the blade on the wood and a bunch of shavings later, it feels like the knife is still cutting through the wood as it did the first time. Now this is a perfect way to test out the blade, as you're able to tell if the blade will hold its sharpness for a long time or not. This way you'll have an idea on how often you'll need to sharpen it. Now before we do the paper test to see how this blade is holding up, we'll begin the second test of the blade, which is to chop away on this piece of wood. So this time we'll start chopping away on this piece of wood until we're able to chop off a piece. Now the main reason we're doing this test is because sometimes you may be out in your backyard or camping and you come across a branch you may want to cut. Well, you want to see if this knife will cut those branches and still remain useful and sharp after you're done cutting the branch. So once again, after many chops later, we're finally able to cut off a piece. So now we do the paper test, and right off the bat you can tell that this cuts through that piece of paper without a problem. This has no problems cutting the piece of paper even after chopping away on some pine wood. So I'm very impressed by how the sharpness of the blade has held up to this point. This, to be honest, doesn't even feel like a $15 to $25 knife, but don't tell Civivi though, or they'll hike up the price. So now let's start with the next test, which is where we drop the knife to the concrete to see if the tip of the blade will survive. Will this bend or break? What do you think? Let's find out. So the Sizzle has no problem piercing through the pine board. That's not even a challenge for this knife. Now for the real test, we'll be dropping it at around what is the average height of about 3 feet, which is where I feel you can probably drop it when you pull it out of your pocket. So we're not dropping it from the top of the house or anything of that sort. The test is more of a real life scenario, which is around 2 to 3 feet of height when you pull it out of your pocket. And right off the bat, we can see that there is a minor damage to the tip. Nothing too extreme though. This obviously holds up much better than some other knives I've tested out that are made from some other affordable steels, like the 5CR15 MOV, where some of those blades haven't survived this test. Those tips tend to break or bend horribly. So this one here survived the drop test. Again, not bad for a budget knife at all. Hardly any damage to the tip. Next, we'll keep throwing it around a little bit more, but this time to see how the scales hold up. These are made from G10, a high pressure fiberglass laminate, which provides a strong, lightweight, and comfortable grip. So they're not your average cheap plastic scales you find on a lot of the budget knives. This is a better quality. So after throwing it around multiple times, we can see that the scales do look scratched, and you can obviously tell because they're black scales. If they would have been some sort of earth tone, maybe the scratches wouldn't be that visible. But these are minor scratches. They're not too deep like in some other cheap plastic scales. These are minor scratches that you can hardly notice on the surface of the scale. So this is another great benefit from this budget knife. And now for the ultimate test, running it over with my pickup. Now, my pickup is a Chevy 1500 that weighs close to about 4,000 pounds. So let's see if the knife is able to survive or if it'll bend or break. Now the first test will be done with the knife in a closed position. The reason for this test is to see what would happen to the knife in a real life scenario if you accidentally dropped it while crossing the street or something of that sort. That's the point of the test, to have some real life scenarios play out and see what's the outcome. So we'll go over it not once, but twice. And after the second pass, we can see that the knife didn't really experience any real damage to it. So now we'll do the test, but this time with the knife in an open position, to see if by any chance not only the knife or the scales get damaged, but also to see if the liner or the ceramic ball bearings or the pivot pin suffer any damage. And once again, we'll run it over 2 times. And now let's take a look at the result. Miraculously, this knife did not break after further inspection. I'm able to see that there wasn't really any visible damage aside from a little bit of debris and the tire tread marks. Now, I did feel that the liner lock was slightly harder to push aside to fold the knife, So maybe there could have been some minor warping to the liner, but in order to confirm that, we'll take the knife apart to inspect. So after taking the knife apart to further inspect and see if any damage was done, I found that the ceramic ball bearings had no visible damage. The liner also showed no sign of warping, but either way, I still proceeded to slightly try to straighten it out just to see if that helped. I put everything back together and the knife started to perform once again like it did the first time. So the only downside to it is just the visible scratches because of the color of the scales, but that's not really something to be too concerned about. Overall, I will rate this knife as a 5 out of 5 because of its affordability, durability, and aesthetics. It's hard to beat the price and quality you're getting here.
Recently, I had seen this knife trending on YouTube, and I started to question how good was this knife that a lot of people were talking about it. Some people are saying this knife is too good for the price, that it's flying off the shelves at Walmart. And indeed, that was the case because when I checked my local Walmarts, which I have 4 near me, only one of them had them in stock, and they only had 2 knives left, with over 200 plus individuals with this knife in their cart. So at any moment, those 2 knives could have been purchased and I would have been left scavenging around looking to see when would they get more in stock, or I would have had to order it online and just wait to see when they would come in. So for my own sanity, I went ahead and I bought one before midnight. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sleep thinking I missed my chance. So anyways, I received it the following day around 7 p.m. When I checked the website again, it showed out of stock already. So good thing I bought one the night before. So here we are with the knife in hand, and I'm ready to go over its specs and put it to the test to see just how good this Ozark D2 knife is. We'll check to see how good it holds its sharpness, and we'll see if it bends easily or not. We'll also go over a few pros and cons, plus we'll also provide a star rating at the end. The price of the Ozark D2 knife is currently running it for $9.97. The size of the blade is 3.25 inches in length, 15/16 of an inch in height, and between 1/16 and a 1/8 of an inch in width. The size of the handle is 4.25 inches in length, about 1 inch in height, and about half an inch in width. When opened, the knife measures about 7.5 inches in length. The knife is made of D2 high carbon steel blade, which is a tougher and more durable steel that can hold its edge much longer. So you don't have to sharpen it as often as with other soft steel blades. However, because it's a tougher steel, it would just be a bit more challenging to sharpen. But regardless, it is still a great steel. Now this has an injection handle, which feels a little cheap, a little plasticky, but it's still not so bad. You're still able to get a good grip of it. Plus, it's understandable that they were trying to save some money by using a more inexpensive option for the handle to put the money on the steel blade instead. You can always swap out the handles or get some custom made ones if you'd prefer. I honestly thought that the handle was going to be a brighter orange, just how it looks online, but once it came in, I noticed that it was a bit dull, but that's okay. It's still easy to spot the knife if you drop it around in the grass or camping, or if you put it in a toolbox. The color still helps it stick out. Now you get a belt clip or a pocket clip, and it's positioned to where you're able to pull out the knife and easily open it up. You get a slight lock to easy to close and also open your knife. This swings open and closed pretty good. We'll see if it's able to function just as good once we finish testing it out. You get a thumb stud on both sides of the blade, so you can open it from either side. Now let's go ahead and put it to the test. First, we'll check to see how good it holds its sharpness. So right out of the box, this knife is able to cut through paper without much of a problem. It can easily cut through plastic as well. The knife is sharp enough that it can chip off pieces of wood from this 2x4 pretty easily. We'll run the knife several times across the 2x4 to try to see if it dulls the knife or not. Now let's cut some branches. Even though I had already passed the knife on the 2x4, this is still cutting through branches fairly well. Some cheap steel usually dulls pretty quick as soon as you start to use it, but this shows that the knife is holding an edge pretty good. It's still able to cut through rope without a problem. And now let's run the paper test again, and you can see that the blade is still able to cut through the paper. That is actually impressive. Now let's see how the tip of the blade holds up. This easily goes through a plastic bottle. As we drop the knife onto a 2x4, this goes through it as well without a problem. Now let's really put that tip to the test and see if it bends or not by doing a little bit of knife throwing. Now I'm no professional knife thrower, and I'll be the first to admit that. I'm pretty bad at it. But in this case, it's a good thing when I miss having the knife puncture the tree, because I'm also putting the handles to the test to see if beating them up onto the tree will break them or not. So let's see how the handles hold up after the test as well. So the tip of the knife is still pretty straight, but you can see a little wear and tear on it. The handles, well, they held up too. Sure, it got scratched up, but I was throwing this knife with force. At least they didn't break off. So if you drop it to the floor, the handles shouldn't break easily. They'll probably just get scratched up a little. So good job on the handles holding up. After throwing the knife, chopping some branches, cutting pieces of 2x4s, the knife is still holding up pretty good. Last test after all the beating on it is the quick bend test to see how it holds up. If you bend it hard enough, you can definitely break it, but even other knives that cost more than $10 have that problem as well. So this knife is holding up pretty good, and it's still able to open and close without much of a problem. Yes, it bends a little, but it's still holding up. I do see a little wear and tear on the blade after the testing, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. So the blade did hold up pretty good in my opinion, and it is still cutting through paper. So here are a few pros and cons of this knife. Pros: it's affordable. $10 is not bad at all. If you lose it, it's not breaking the bank. Number 2, it's durable. You can beat it up and it still works well. Worst case scenario, if you break it, you can get one for $10. Number 3, it's got a very nice design to it. I really enjoy the way it looks. Number 4, it swings open and closes smoothly. Even after the beating up, it still works just fine. And number 5, the blade holds up pretty well. I'm impressed by the blade, so definitely worth the money. Now let's take a look at the cons. And in this case, I only have one con, and that is that Walmart runs out of this knife pretty quick, so get one as soon as possible. That's the only con I have. So I give this knife a 4.5 out of 5-star rating. The reason I give it a 4.5 is just because of the handles. They still feel a little plasticky, but hey, what do you expect for $10? So let me know if you agree with my thoughts about this knife. Do you agree with my star rating? Do you have one of these knives? And if you do, what do you rate it? And what do you think of it? Let me know in the comment section.
Now, if we compare it to another budget-friendly D2 blade like the Ozark, I would still prefer the Civivi. Yes, the Civivi is more expensive, but it is still affordable compared to the other knives. Also, the aesthetics look better in my opinion on the Sizzle. The blade is slightly larger on the Ozark, but not by much. The grip feels much better on the Sizzle than on the Ozark plastic scales. But this is subjective and everyone has their own opinion. So would I recommend the Sizzle? And the answer is absolutely. I feel that you're getting a great quality knife for an affordable price. So if you were considering on getting the Sizzle, maybe this video has helped you make up your mind. Anyways, that is all I have for y'all today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, have yourself a great day.